So today's vlog, I thought I would just share with you kind of a day in the life of what it's like living with autism from a parent perspective. Let me say that, because we can't know 100% what's going on in the minds of others and how they feel. And at some point throughout the month, I will do this same video, but with Christian, so he can kind of give us his take on what life is like. And I also, before I start, want to say that this is just my perspective. This is not the perspective of every family who has autism, because everybody in every situation is completely unique. But for us, we have 3 special needs kids, 2 that are on the spectrum. So we have a pretty good idea of what living with autism is like, and the stressors and the added things that are added to our days. For Christian, he is very, very smart, very, very social. He has some really great strengths in places that a lot of kids with autism don't. He still requires intervention. He still has to have a functional behavior assessment and a positive behavior plan in place that gets used regularly. And what those are, a functional behavior assessment is when they evaluate his behavior, how often it's happening, what's triggering it, how we're fixing it. And the behavior plan is a detailed plan into how to either avoid it or work through those behavior issues when they arise. With Christian, those behaviors can be scary. They can be physical. And with him being 15 years old and bigger than his mom and many of his teachers, you really have to know what that behavior plan says and know how to use it correctly to keep him safe, yourself safe, and anybody else that happens to be in the vicinity safe. He also receives counseling services, speech and language services, music therapy, which a lot of people think is a little weird, but it helps with his memory. It kind of helps with some of his academic skills, and he enjoys it. So it's also a way to kind of get him to do other work, because you can adapt it and get some of his work done through music. And it's less seen as a negative task. It's something that he likes to do. He is an occupational therapy kid. He has at one point in time received physical therapy, but has finally grown enough that he doesn't. He also receives respite services. He's got a service coordinator who comes in and meets with him on a regular basis, and also helps access services in the community that are outside of the school system. And one of those services is Community Hab, where he has a worker that comes in. Currently, she's in our home twice a week and helps him with social skills in public, money skills, planning. They're going to work on cooking, and they're going to do some 4-H projects, and he's going to join 4-H this year. Volunteering, since he's at the age now where he can start doing volunteer jobs, she will work with him on those. He also works at school. He goes twice a week to a farm not far from the school, and he mucks stalls and feeds horses, and works on the horse farm, and he gets paid for his work as well. And these are all great skills for him in terms of after school and the ability to have a job, whether that's a paying or a volunteer job. He wants to work with animals in some aspect, and he doesn't mind doing the dirty jobs that nobody else wants to do. So he has come a long way. He was a kid who started with early intervention, so we've seen some big gains from that. But he did start at 4. He was a preschooler with a disability, and then really got into services in kindergarten, whereas Carter was diagnosed at 2 and immediately started services. So he really kind of got some of those imperative, necessary services when he was really, really young. We did a lot of floor time, some DIR. He currently gets speech and language therapy 5 days a week. He is, at one point, was considered functionally nonverbal, uses a Dynavox gets assistive technology, has gotten sign language counseling, OT, PT. He's another kid that has great strengths. He is really smart. It's just getting that information out. The major difference between Christian and Carter are their communication level and social skills. Those are strengths for Christian, and those are major deficits for Carter. One of the issues with Christian is he really struggles emotionally with some of his behaviors and some self-regulating of his emotions, and Carter does not. The biggest naughty thing or bad behavior or whatever you want to use for Carter is he whines. So it's a good example of how different they are. Carter is a sensory seeker and a sensory avoider, which can make life a little interesting. He sleeps in noise canceling headphones. Until recently, we had to take them everywhere. He's finally started going to the movies and not requiring them. He also gets community hab and has a service coordinator as well, and accesses respite care. Christian's on medicine. Carter is not. Again, it just goes to show how different people on the spectrum are. If I can get Carter to get on video and kind of give you a glimpse into who he is, I'll do that. You'll see almost immediately how different he is, how different the autism spectrum can seem to people, how it looks, because they are just night and day, these two. So you see that, going to school is not just getting the education that everybody else seems to think is included. That all of those services and therapies happen at school. They have specific test modifications put right on their individual education plan. Things like the use of a scribe. Test taking is done one-on-one in a quiet place with a familiar person. They can have the test read to them. They can use computers, iPads, or whatever electronic devices, calculators. It's endless. They don't just have a test and have it put in front of them and say, here you go. It's your responsibility to pass it. It's your responsibility to take it. And I had somebody ask about school. The ideal situation on paper is an inclusive environment, which would be the kids would go to school in their district, in the classroom with all of their peers, with no segregation. That very rarely happens. Oftentimes, you'll have a child in the classroom back in the corner, and you'll immediately know that they're different. Or in the aspect of my kids, when they were in district, they were in a self-contained classroom set apart from everybody anyway. That is not an inclusive environment. That also wasn't the right environment for them. So they all three attend a specialized school outside of district. And it's an autism program. So the staff are trained a little differently. They have more patience, more understanding of how to teach kids on the spectrum. They have a better ability and a more innate sense to meet them where they're at and teach them in a way that they will learn, versus having this whole canned idea of how to teach. It isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's catered to each individual child's needs. And for us, it works. Obviously, we'd love for them to be at home and in their school district and going to school with their neighbors and having friends within our community and being a part of this community. But we're not in a place where that's possible. That isn't the best for them. As a parent, it's not always the easiest choice to make to move them out of district. In fact, we fought for years to keep our last child, the last one to move out. We fought for years to keep him. But there comes a point when you realize that a good education is better than what you think he deserves. What a kid deserves in terms of treatment and education isn't always what they get. So for us, it works. Having the kids out of district, they are all finally, for the first time, in the same school district. So that's a bonus for us. So you can see this is pretty involved. We also have regular doctor visits with their pediatrician. We also have a doctor that manages just their disability and their medications. So it can be a little tricky. It can be a little stressful. So understand that if you know a family and they have a child with autism and the parent seems super stressed or snaps at you for apparently no reason at all, understand that it isn't you. We're all human and we all handle stress in a different way. And we all have stress. Life isn't easy, but nothing easy ever turns out to be what we thought it would be anyway. So, just an idea of kind of everyday life for the kids and all that is put into their education and their daily life makes it a little interesting. And I hope that it helps you kind of understand life and the stresses and how involved families have to be. And if you have any specific questions in terms of what their devices or what their services are, Carter's communication device, how to get them, service coordination, any of that, if you have any specific questions, how things look. I know at least Christian will allow me to video him and it might offer some insight. So another day in the books. Tomorrow, I don't know yet. I haven't decided on a topic. I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of suggestions, so we'll see what tomorrow brings.